Today's story is about a jailbreak, but it is not like any other jailbreak incident that has ever happened in this world. This story will thrill you because the way the prisoners had broke out of the jail left everyone astonished, and on the other hand, this story is filled with mysteries that no one has been able to solve to this day. I'm talking about the world's most dangerous prison, Alcatraz. This prison was located on 22 acres island in the middle of the water, about 2 kilometers away from San Francisco, California. Although this prison was built in 1910, at that time only the army used it. But then when army left the prison in 1933, on 11th August 1934, the US Department of Justice turned it into a federal prison. This prison was made for those prisoners and gangsters who were very dangerous, especially for those who had previously escaped from the prison or tried to escape. The prison was considered as the most dangerous prison in the world because anyone who tried to escape from it either died or were caught. The prison guards had direct orders to shoot any prisoner attempting to escape on sight. And even if someone managed to sneak out of the prison and escape the guards' notice, it wouldn't do any good because all around were high waves and cold waters of the ocean. Jumping into that water was like taking your own life because no one could survive in that cold water for more than 20 minutes. That's why America called Alcatraz an escape-proof prison, meaning a prison from which no one could escape. Now let's talk about the main characters of this story. There are 4 main characters in this story. The first one is Franklin Morris. Franklin Morris was a criminal minded since childhood and he committed his first crime at just the age of 13 years. But as he grew older, his crimes increased. Franklin Morris was once caught for a bank robbery and sent to Louisiana prison for 10 years. But he escaped from Louisiana prison. However, a year later, he was caught again and sent to Alcatraz prison on 20th January 1960. In the prison, he met another prisoner, Alan West, who is the second character in the story. Alan West was initially sent to Florida prison on charges of car theft. But when he tried to escape from Florida prison, he was sent to Alcatraz prison in 1957, almost 3 years before Morris arrived. Franklin Morris already knew Alan West because they had met before in Florida prison during their sentences. Then on 24th October 1960, John Anglin, and about 2.5 months later, on 10th January 1961, Clarence Anglin, 2 more prisoners arrived at Alcatraz. They are the third and the fourth characters in this story. John Anglin and Clarence Anglin were brothers and they were sent to Alcatraz for a bank robbery and attempting to escape from Atlanta prison. Coincidentally, these 2 brothers had met Franklin Morris and Alan West in Florida prison during their previous sentences. All 4 prisoners knew each other very well, so when these 4 prisoners met in Alcatraz prison, it was like finding someone you know very well, making it easier to pass the time. In this way, they spent their time in prison together. However, since they arrived at the prison at different times, the Anglin brothers and Alan West were assigned cells in B block, but Franklin Morris was given a cell in a different block. As a result, Franklin Morris could only meet them when they came out for meals or other activities according to prison's timetable. Therefore, in September 1961, Franklin Morris applied to the prison authorities to change his cell to one in B block. The request was approved and Franklin Morris was moved to the cell next to Alan West in B block. Now that all 4 were in the same block, they could talk to each other anytime during the day. In the prison, each inmate was kept in separate cells and prisoners were counted 13 times a day. Although all the rules and the security in the prisons were very strict, the inmates were provided with all the necessary amenities. Those who liked painting could paint. Those who enjoyed reading had an access to thousands of books in the library, and those who liked music were given musical instrument. Franklin Morris, who also had an interest in music, had an harmonica which he used to play during the music time. As you might know, prisoners are assigned different tasks in the prison to keep them from getting bored and to allow them to earn some money. Franklin Morris was given a job in the library, Clarence was assigned the task of cutting prisoners' hair, and Alan West was responsible for cleaning and painting the cells in B block. During this time, an incident occurred where Alan West, while cleaning the top of the cell in Block B, caused a lot of dust and dirt to fall down. The guards called him down and told him to clean properly. He responded that cleaning the top would inevitably cause dust to fall, but if a curtain is put up, the dust wouldn't fall down. This suggestion reached the prison's authorities and they gave him the permission to put up the curtain, which then prevented the dust from falling. Time passed and June 1962 arrived. On the morning of 12th June 1962 at 7:15 am, the prison alarm sounded to wake up the inmates, and then the routine count of all prisoners began. The guards started counting the prisoners, first reaching Alan West's cell where they found him standing. Then they moved to the cell next to Alan's, which was Franklin Morris's cell. They saw Morris still lying in the bed and called out to wake him up, but he didn't respond. The guard called out Morris several times, but he still didn't wake up. Angered, the guard reached into Morris's cell and hit him hard on his head. As soon as he hit Morris's head, it rolled off the bed and fell into the ground. The guard, shocked, took a step back, but when he looked closely at Morris's fallen head, he realized something was wrong. Upon closer inspection, he saw that the head was not real but a dummy. The guard immediately blew his whistle, summoning other guards to the scene. As the guards moved further, they found two more prisoners, apparently still sleeping in their cells. When they shook their heads, those two turned out to be dummies. These cells belonged to John and Clarence Anglin. This meant that Franklin Morris and Anglin brothers had escaped from the prison. For the first time, the siren was sounded in Alcatraz prison, a siren that had never been heard before because no inmate had ever successfully escaped from the prison. This was not to say that no one had ever tried to escape before. 31 inmates had attempted to escape the Alcatraz on 12 different occasions. However, out of these 31 inmates, 21 were caught, 6 were shot dead, and 2 drowned in the water. Additionally, 2 inmates were sentenced to death and executed in a gas chamber because they killed 2 guards during their escaped attempt. But since the prison opened in 1934, this was the first time that an inmate had successfully escaped without anyone noticing. When the news reached the prison warden, he too was in a state of panic because this prison was specifically designed to be escape proof, and yet someone had managed to break out. You can imagine the warden's condition upon receiving this news. After this, the entire prison and the island were thoroughly searched, but none of these 3 escaped prisoners were found. When Franklin Morris and Anglin brothers' cells were inspected, another shocking discovery was made. They found a large hole at the bottom of the wall behind each of their cells, big enough for a person to easily pass through. They then began inspecting other prisoners' cells, and when the guards reached Alan West's cell, they saw a similar hole in the wall. Alan West was then awakened and questioned. Initially, he denied everything, but when the prison authorities offered him a deal stating that if he became government witness, he would be pardoned for attempting to escape, he decided to reveal the entire story since he had no other way out. The full story was that when Franklin Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960, he had always intended to break out of prison. He met Alan West and later John and Clarence Anglin. Since Morris already knew Alan and Anglin brothers, he shared his plan with them and included them in it. They began looking for a way to escape from Alcatraz. As I mentioned earlier, Alan West was responsible for cleaning, and during one of his cleaning tasks, he discovered a ventilation hole on the roof of B block cell. This ventilation hole was not sealed with cement, and if the grill could be removed, it would provide an easy way to escape through the ventilation. Alan shared this information with Morris. However, the problem was that the ventilation hole was in block B, while Morris was in another block at that time. Therefore, Morris requested the prison administration to change his cell, which was granted in December 1961, placing him in the cell next to Helen in Block B. Now that all four were in the same block, they began working on the next phase of their plan. Their new goal was to somehow reach the roof of B block, where the ventilation hole was. To do that, they first had to get out of their cell. To get out of their cells, they needed to cut through the bars on their cell doors. However, the bars were made of strong steel which couldn't be easily cut even with the saws. Even if they managed to cut the bars, they couldn't avoid the guards who patrolled the gallery day and night. One day, they noticed a gallery behind their cells with many pipes that supplied water to cells and toilets. They decided that they could use these pipes to climb to the roof, but to do that, they had to first reach the gallery behind their cells. Accessing the gallery through the cell doors was impossible, so the only option remaining was to make a hole in the 8-inch thick wall at the back of their cell. This wall was right behind their cells and led to the gallery. However, drilling a hole through such a thick wall was very difficult. After discovering a small 9-inch window at the bottom of the wall, the four prisoners decided to widen it up so that they could escape through it. They began stealing old saw blades, spoon, and butter knife from the prison kitchen with the help of other inmates. Using this tool, Morris, Allen, and Anglin brothers started chipping away at the walls of their cell every night. They even managed to create a drill using a part of broken vacuum cleaner to speed up the process. To avoid detection, they did the work during the hour and a half of music time after dinner, as the noise from the music would mask the sound of their drilling. They continued this routine for several months, slowly creating holes big enough to crawl through. To avoid suspicion from the guard, they covered the holes with cardboard painted to look like a wall. Allen, who had access to the paint due to his job, made sure that a fake window blended seamlessly with the cell walls. After several months, all four prisoners had holes large enough to crawl through. They would crawl out of their cells and into the gallery behind them using the pipes to climb up to the roof where the ventilation hole was. Once on the roof, they faced their biggest challenge, crossing the cold, treacherous water surrounding Alcatraz Island. Frank Morris had a plan for this. While working in the prison library, he had come across a magazine called Popular Mechanics, which describes how to make life vest and board out of raincoat. The group began stealing raincoats, collecting over 50 with the help of other inmates. The problem was where to store them and construct the boat without being noticed. They decided to use the space above their cell, but even there they risked being seen by the guard station nearby. To solve this, Allen West intentionally created a mess while cleaning, causing dirt and dust to fall and prompting the guards to allow him to hang a curtain to contain the mess. With the curtain in place, they could work behind it undetected. The final obstacle was to avoid being noticed missing from their cells. They crafted a dummy head using the mixture of soap, toothpaste, toilet paper, and dust. They painted these dummy heads with flesh-colored paint and glued on a real hair, which Clarence Anglin collected from his job of cutting inmates' hair. Each night, when the lights went out, Morris, the Anglin brothers, and Allen West placed the dummy heads on their pillow, covered it with blanket to resemble the sleeping bodies. They left the top part of the heads visible to avoid suspicion during the night checks. They would then crawl through the holes in the wall to the gallery behind, climb the pipe to the roof, and work behind the curtain. They made a life vest and a large 16 into 14 foot rubber boat out of raincoats. They sealed the seam of the boat using the heat from the steam pipe to ensure it was airtight. They also stole a wooden planks to make paddles and loosened the bolts on the ventilation grill to prepare for their escape. In December 1961, they began executing their plan, and by June 1962, they had completed their work. During these 6 months, they drilled holes in the walls, made dummy heads resembling their own faces, created life jackets, and constructed a large boat. When everything was ready, they chose 11th June 1962 as the day to escape from the prison. On the night of Monday, 11 June 1962, after the prisoner count and lights out at around 9:30 p.m., the four men placed their dummy heads on the beds and made their way through the holes in the walls to the gallery behind their cells. However, Alan West had accidentally used too much cement to seal his window, making it hard to remove. He struggled to free it while the Anglin brothers helped him from the other side. As time passed, the other three decided to proceed with the plan and asked Alan to join them once he managed to open his window. Franklin Morris and Anglin brothers climbed up the pipes to remove the ventilation grill to access the roof. They waited for Alan on the roof, but when he didn't show up after a long time, they proceeded to the edge of the roof. Using a 50-foot pipe, they climbed down to the ground. They then scaled a 12-foot fence made of iron bars and stealthily made their way to the shore. Morris used his concertina to inflate the rubber boat. Once the boat was ready, they launched it into the water and boarded it, disappearing into the sea. Meanwhile, Alan West managed to remove the cement and climb up to the roof, but by then it was too late. Franklin Morris and Anglin brothers were already sailed away into the ocean. Left no choice, Alan returned to his cell. The next morning, the prison authorities were shocked to discover the escape. They immediately launched a massive search operation across the island and the surrounding sea. Every nook and cranny of the island was searched, including small caves and remote areas. The sea was combed with helicopters, but no trace of escapees was found. When the prison guard, the coastal guard, and the local police found no clues, the FBI took over the investigation. They were astonished by the elaborate plan executed by Morris and his companion. The FBI questioned Alan West, who revealed their plan to head to Angel Island, about 3 kilometers from Alcatraz, and then to the mainland to steal a clothes and the car before fleeing the country. The FBI searched Angel Island thoroughly but found no evidence of the escapees. The news of the escape spread across the United States of America, causing a sensation. The fact that 3 inmates had escaped from Alcatraz, a prison believed to be escape-proof, was a major embarrassment. The investigation continued for a month, and by October 1962, a new information emerged. A Norwegian cargo ship named the Unravel reported seeing a body floating in the sea near the Golden Gate Bridge on 17th July 1962, about a month after the escape. The body was dressed in clothing similar to the Alcatraz inmates. However, the ship crew didn't report it immediately as they were in the route to Canada and didn't want to be delayed. When they returned, they informed FBI, who searched the area but found nothing due to the passage of time. If the crew had reported it sooner, there might have been some chance to find more evidence. Around 9 months after the jailbreak, Alcatraz prison had to be shut down. This was because operating the prison cost 3 times more than the other prison. Additionally, the salty sea water and the constant dampness had severely damaged the walls, requiring maintenance cost of around $3 to $5 million. With such high expenses and the fact that the prisoners could still escape, it made no sense to keep the prison running. Considering all these factors, Attorney General Robert Kennedy ordered to closure of the prison, and on 21st March 1963, Alcatraz was permanently closed and the remaining inmates were transferred to other prisons. Meanwhile, the FBI was working tirelessly to locate these 3 escapees but found no clues. However, in January 1965, the FBI received a significant lead. Their informant reported that Anglin brothers were seen in the club of Brazil. Acting on this information, the FBI sent a team to Brazil and conducted a thorough investigation for several days, but came empty-handed. The FBI continued their search, questioning Morris and Anglin brothers' family, surveilling them and tapping their phones, but no evidence of their whereabouts emerged. Eventually, 17 years later after the jailbreak, on 31st December 1979, the FBI conceded defeat and officially closed the case, concluding that 3 men had likely to be drowned. They argued that the boat they had constructed wasn't sturdy enough to withstand the ocean's wave, and the cold water would have made the survival impossible. Furthermore, Alan West claimed they had planned to steal a car and clothes after reaching the mainland, but no car thefts were reported that night. The FBI handed the case to the US Marshal Service and officially closed it on their records. However, the public did not believe FBI's conclusion that the man had drowned, and skepticism about the FBI's investigation persisted. arrested. No bodies were ever found, nor was there any conclusive evidence proving their death. Over the years, various incidents and pieces of evidence have surfaced suggesting that the escapees might have survived. The first theory posits that the three men followed Alan Wester's described plan. They reached the Angel Island and proceeded to the mainland, stole clothes and car, and vanished forever. The FBI claimed no car was stolen that night, but on 2011, National Geographic documentary Vanished from Alcatraz revealed that a 1955 blue Chevrolet was reported stolen from the Marin County on 12th June 1962, the day after the escape. Additionally, the belief that surviving the ocean was impossible was debunked. In 1962, 6 months after the Alcatraz escape, another inmate, John Paul Scott, managed to swim across the bay to the Golden Gate Bridge. Though he was captured and suffered hypothermia, his survival proved that crossing the bay was not impossible. Moreover, John and Clarence Anglin were known to be a strong swimmer since childhood. The second theory suggests that the escapees traveled about 180 meters on their boat before being picked up by a waiting boat. This boat, positioned 180 meters away, was outside the restricted zone around Alcatraz, where no unauthorized boats were allowed. This boat was likely arranged by another inmates with connection of powerful criminals and gangsters. The theory is possible because it explains why the three men left without waiting for Alan West. They had a specific meeting time and place that night. Additionally, Robert Keke, a San Francisco Police Department officer, reported seeing a boat near Alcatraz around 1 a.m. on the nights of 11th and 12th June 1962. He observed that the boat was waiting near Alcatraz and later departed towards the Golden Gate Bridge and disappeared into the ocean. In conclusion, while the FBI officially closed the case, the mystery of what happened to Frank Morris and Anglin brothers after their escape from Alcatraz remains unsolved, with the theories of both survival and death continuing to captivate public imagination. Apart from these two theories, many other events over the years have suggested that three escapees might have survived that night. For example, the Anglin family received letters and greetings from an unknown sender every Christmas or New Year for several years. Additionally, until their mother's death, she received a bouquet of flowers every Mother's Day without a sender's name or address. When Anglin brothers' mother passed away in 1973, two tall women with heavy makeups were seen at her funeral. These women spoke to no one and disappeared shortly after. Similarly, at the funeral of Anglin brothers' father in 1989, two unknown men with long beard and mustaches were seen crying near the casket before leaving. Robert Anglin, a brother of John and Clarence, believed these disguised individuals were indeed his brothers, who altered their appearance to avoid detection. Even the US Marshal officers present at the funeral were suspicious, but the individuals fled before they could be questioned. Years passed until January 2013, when the San Francisco Police Department received a letter purportedly from John Anglin. In the letter, John claimed that all three escapees had survived the jailbreak and were safe. He wrote that he was now 83 years old and was suffering from cancer. He also mentioned that Frank Morris died in October 2008 and Clarence Anglin in 2011. John offered to surrender in exchange of medical treatment and assurance that he won't be served more than a year in the prison. The police conducted fingerprint, DNA and handwriting analysis on the letter, but the results were inconclusive and no further action was taken by any investigating agencies. In 2015, a History Channel documentary revealed another intriguing piece of evidence. Fred Brizzi, a close friend of Anglin brothers, claimed to have met them at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1975. He presented a photograph of the brothers standing in the field, which he said he took during that meeting. Forensic analysis suggested that the men in the photograph were likely the Anglin brothers, though the sunglasses they wore made it hard to be certain. As of 2024, 64 years after the Alcatraz escape, the mystery remains unsolved. According to FBI, the escapees likely died that night. However, various theories, pieces of evidence, and letters suggest that they might have lived at least until 2008. The FBI had closed the case, but the US Marshal Service continued to investigate. They have created age progress photos of three men and continue to search for them. This search will persist until they are remains are found or until all three would be at least 100 years old. Since its closure, Alcatraz prison was open to public in 1973. Today, it attracts 2,500 to 3,000 visitors daily from around the world. The escape has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and film, but no one can definitely say what happened to Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin after their escape. I hope the story has intrigued you. It surely has sparked thoughts and theories in your minds about what might have happened to them after that night. Share your thoughts in the comment box about what do you think had happened to them after they escape. Until next time, take care and stay curious.